Hi, everyone. Before we get started, I'm doing a rare intro for the podcast, and that is because I do not want you to miss out if you are not a part of our CabralSupportGroup.com free Facebook group, or if you're not on the EquilibriumNutrition.com email newsletter, which not everyone is. So if you listen to the podcast, this is for our community. This is for people that are on our email newsletter list, and this is for our podcast listeners. Twice a year, and only twice a year, we do a full semi-annual sale at EquilibriumNutrition.com. This essentially gets you the same products that we offer every single day, but up to 25% off. So I just wanted to make sure you knew about that. It ends this week. So be sure to head on over to EquilibriumNutrition.com before July 19th, 2020 to take advantage of store-wide savings. And now let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. We are here today with our Total Wellness Tuesday episode, where we will be going through if you are under or over methylating and why that even matters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the show out with a list of symptoms. I'm going to give you the symptoms of the under-methylator, and then I'm going to juxtapose that with symptoms of the over-methylator. What I want to do is, before I share any of the information about what methylation is just to start to see if you fit into one of these categories, or if you are working with anyone, if you're a health coach or a doctor, or if you know anyone in your family that's suffering from these symptoms, because you'll notice that many are not just physical based, but they're actually mindset, mental, emotional. So I really want to share this with you today. I hope to shed a little light on it. It's a confusing topic, but we're going to make it a whole lot easier to understand today so that you begin to see if you need to correct these issues at an underlying root cause imbalance level, or if you are good for right now, but maybe you could pass on this information to someone else. So I'm going to go over about a dozen or so symptoms of undermethylation, and then I'll pull it back together and actually tell you what this is, why we're talking about it, and why it's becoming such a big topic over the past couple of years. So here are some symptoms of people that undermethylate. And again, I will share what that means in just a moment. So fatigue is a big one, okay? Fatigue, but also the inability to fall asleep or stay asleep. Nervousness and perfectionism. You could put in there anxiety. Anxiety is going to fall into both categories. I'll share why in a moment. Depression would be there. Addictions can fall into both. Low serotonin activity, the happy, feel-good neurotransmitter. Headaches, obsessive compulsive behaviors, high libido, allergies, meaning like seasonal allergies, environmental allergies. It could even be food sensitivities, but people that are more sensitive to their environment. We'll put in multiple chemical sensitivities in that as well. Ritualistic-based behavior, meaning they don't like to break routine. And frequent GI issues, inflammation of the gut, again, related to digestion. I've seen a lot of nausea first thing in the morning. That could be another symptom as well of an undermethylator. Sometimes they run a little bit warmer in terms of body temperature. If you're looking at those SNPs, those single nucleotide polymorphisms. Again, we'll talk about that in a moment. But if you're looking and you've done your genetic testing before, you might see it attributed to the MTHFR gene, the C677T, and also the A1298C. You don't need to know what those are if you haven't already run your genetic test. Again, those would come up. Other frequent ones are the MS, BHMT, MAT, and SAHH. Again, don't worry about those. If you haven't run your genes before, I'm going to go through the symptoms with you today. Oftentimes, people who are undermethylators have higher amounts of histamine. And again, they see that as hives, they see that as urticaria, they see it as seasonal allergies, etc. I've even seen it as excessive response to bug bites, things like that as well. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes more prone to autoimmune-based issues. What else would I say? for the most part, those are the big things. I've seen definitely the perfectionism, the quick to temper. Those are big ones that I've seen as well. And anything that goes along with pylorrhea. So if you've heard me talk about that in the past, it is essentially, it deals with anxiety. It deals with inability to kind of calm oneself down, quick temper. And when I've spoken about that before in a great book, I think it's by Dr. Walsh, Nutrient Power, really talks about kids with ADD, ADHD, that they could be lacking in very specific nutrients. And again, we've gone over that, but just want to share some of this with you today because I don't think that you always need to do all of the testing for this, but zinc, magnesium are huge. Another one is vitamin B6. And then, of course, just balancing that with a little bit of calcium in addition to the magnesium can be enormous. We'll go over more supplementation. We'll be going over some foods, things like that towards the end. But that is the undermethylators. So again, if you could just rewind and kind of listen to those lists that I just gave you. But again, think about this, it's almost difficult to unwind as an undermethylator. Insomnia issues, fatigue, low mood, headaches, obsessive compulsive behaviors, higher libido, kind of the body's always moving. It's kind of always going, and then you're more prone to being more sensitive, okay? So now let's go over methylators are, right? So this thing called methylation, are you undermethylating or are you overmethylating? We'll find out. So overmethylating, more prone to anxiety, more prone to depression, more prone to panic attacks, ADHD, can be in there as well. We'll go over that again. Behavior issues, restlessness, issues with histamines in general, meaning that you have a much more negative reaction. You might not produce as much, but a much more negative reaction. Oftentimes more of an extrovert, whereas the undermethylator could be more of an introvert. More prone to schizophrenia as an overmethylator. More prone to being maybe more artistic, maybe more creative, and all the pros and the cons that can go along with that. And again, there's sleep-based disorders along with overmethylation as well. So there's certainly some overlap, but I want to share a couple differences now as well. So I think one of the bigger differences that I would say is oftentimes the overmethylators will be a little bit more lower body temperature as well. Maybe, again, this isn't across the board because you can have thyroid issues and you might have lower body temperature. You can have chronic-based inflammation that can lead to lower body temperature. So it's not the only thing. If we're looking at genes specifically that most contribute to overmethylation, unlike that MTHFR and that C677T, which is like not the most important, but one of them. Overmethylators, you would look at the AGAT, the GAMT, the CBS gene. These are single nucleotide polymorphisms called SNPs for short, and the MT as well. Okay, so although an overmethylator will typically test lower on histamines for a blood test, they don't do well with histamine tolerance. Like they just don't do well with higher histamine-based foods. That could be anything fermented, hot sauces, etc. All right, really, really important to note that one. More prone to drier skin or eczema for the overmethylators. More prone to cavities. More prone to higher homocysteine, where the undermethylators, believe it or not, are more prone to lower histamine. And I know that's sometimes a little bit different from what you hear, but that's the truth. And that's because when you're an overmethylator, and again, this isn't going to make as much sense right now, we're going to get more into this, but overmethylators actually do better with that natural folate than undermethylators. Undermethylators actually do better with a little less folate. It's why they don't do as well with a lot of juicing and a lot of greens and things with a lot of folate. They actually do better with B2, B3, B6, B12 off the top of my head. And then they do well with other, obviously, factors in terms of methylation, which are methionine and trimethylglycine. Trimethylglycine is one of my favorites to use as well. Both certainly need magnesium, for sure. Both certainly need some calcium. Typically, the world that we live in, we need a little bit more magnesium. All right, we'll go into more of that as well, like I said, towards the end. The overmethylators sometimes can be more prone to the restlessness, the racing thoughts, and hyperactivity, but again, that can go both ways. Difficult for the overmethylators in terms of panic attacks. That's definitely more towards the overmethylator. And I would say not as competitive as the undermethylators. They're typically a little bit more sometimes extroverted, like being around people, maybe easier going. They have sometimes a low libido or very low libido versus the undermethylators. What would I say? They're not as nonconformists, meaning like the undermethylators are sometimes against authority. There's sometimes they like to push the boundaries, push the limits a bit. The overmethylators are, again, just more prone towards the anxiety, the paranoia, and the panic as well. So you can see, and one of the reasons why I want to bring this up is I just want to bring more of functional medicine to psychological and mental health-based issues, because it's not just about what happened in the past and past traumas and the life that we've lived. All of that matters. I'm not discounting that whatsoever. I mean, there are things that I've overcome and worked through that was a big part of my process with self-growth. But for sure, a lot of my temper back in the day and a lot of my, just not being happy and lower mood and more on edge, all of that for sure was nutritional imbalances, nutritional deficiencies, massive amounts of inflammation, really poor gut function. And so my gut was controlling a lot of what my brain was thinking. And again, we need to get the bridge between integrative health and psychology. It's just extremely important because, yes, I mean, you can put people on antidepressants and anti-anxiolytics, et cetera, or anti-anxiety medication, which are anti-anxiolytics. But what I want to share is that there's a much deeper level. People just don't need to be given SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. What they really need is to fix this methylation-based issue. And it's not necessarily just as simple as saying, I'm going to take this genetic test and find out what my single nucleotide polymorphisms are, these SNPs. Here's the thing. Just because you match up what's called heterozygous or homozygous, you have 2 copies versus 1 copy of this specific SNP, doesn't necessarily mean that you are overmethylating or undermethylating, and that's why I brought up the symptoms today. If you are not exhibiting symptoms that show that you are out of balance, that doesn't mean that you should start to all of a sudden supplement willy-nilly with higher doses of folate, B12, etc. And when we look at people that are undermethylating, a lot of the times they're using higher doses of folate, even if it's MTHF, or I should say it's called methytetrahydrofolate, that version, which is a natural methylated version, which is the best version to get. However, you don't want a high dose formula of that. It's one of the reasons why when we created our activated B complex, I think it's the only one that I know of that actually puts in a lower amount of methylfolate. So it uses the functional medicine methylfolate, but since I've been working in practice for so long and I wanted to create my own activated B complex, I said, all right, let's do this based on people that could be undermethylators as well, which, by the way, so if we're looking at it, and I just want to share some like real statistics with you, it's shown that it's possible for about 85% of the people with depression to have a methylation issue, and 75% of the people with anxiety to have a methylation issue. And that's important to look at it. And when we look at the overall population, this is coming out of the Walsh Research Institute. If anybody wants to kind of look at the research as well, they're obviously welcome to. And if you look at Dr. Walsh's research, he says about 70% of the population are normal methylators, 22% are undermethylators, and 8% are overmethylators. So you can see that it's about a 3x of the people are undermethylators than overmethylators. That's why I wanted to give the symptoms first before I shared with you kind of the stats, because then people kind of predetermine what camp they should be in. But there are also statistics, again, that are much lower, that only 40% of people are normal, meaning like they're balanced. 45% tend towards undermethylating, and 15% are overmethylators. Either way, it's about a 3-to-1 ratio. And it really comes down to your definition of what normal is. I'm of the mindset that normal people are healthy, right? Like it's the absence of dis-ease. And it is not just not being diagnosed with something, it's actually feeling like you have great energy. You sleep well. Your body's in shape, that you have balanced hormones, like all of those things is healthy. That is normal. It's not normal to have joint pain, to have breathing issues, to have sleep issues. But just because it's not a diagnosed disease doesn't mean that it's normal, doesn't mean that it's healthy. It just means, well, okay, you're not at a disease state yet, but it simply doesn't mean healthy, right? That's why our conventional medicine system is broken. It really is. It's a sick care-based practice. It's not a healthcare practice. You're not allowed to use your insurance for healthcare. I hope everyone knows that. I mean, we would love for insurance to be able to cover all of the labs that we offer people all around the world. but they work on people's health. They don't work on a diagnosed disease, right? They look at what the underlying root causes are that are helping people or keeping people from being healthy. The problem is with conventional medicine, we wait for people to become sick and then we simply manage that sickness. We don't ever get them well. We just manage the sickness, and that's a real issue. If someone comes in with depression, and you're not doing everything that you can from both a conventional and naturopathic perspective or integrated perspective, you need to be doing that. Okay, yeah, if that person is a danger to themselves or anyone else, yes, they should be put on medication. I'm all for that. I'm all for whatever's best for the individual. 9 times out of 10, that's probably not the case. Let's start with, hey, listen, your prescription is literally exercise, and it's in the morning so that you boost those neurotransmitters, because we're going to be talking that in a moment, that a lot of people that are overmethylators, they're not doing well in neurotransmitter-based departments. And so they're imbalanced, and that's the thing. So we need to get them moving their body. We need to get them exercising. We also need to get them eating cleaner. Then we need to be giving them good activated methylated B vitamins. We also need to make sure they're getting magnesium in there. And for the undermethylators, well, here's the thing. We need to make sure that we're not overdoing it, that we're actually calming the mind, that we're giving more zinc, that we're giving vitamin C, that we're giving magnesium, that we're giving vitamin B6, some B12, and that we're giving vitamin D to both camps as well, since that helps with all of the hormones and it helps with neurotransmitters as well. So we kind of did this show in reverse. Some of my favorite movies are done in reverse. So now we get to, well, what is this thing called methylation? So methylation is going to be something I'll probably start talking about a little bit more. I think we've done enough of the Cabral Concept podcast. Today, by the way, is episode 1621. If you want to go to stephencabral.com/1621, that I want to start getting into some of the more maybe complex functional medicine-based topics. And that's because if you've read The Rain Barrel Effect or you've listened to the podcast for some time, that you're beginning to understand that all of this works together. However, if you were to just jump in the podcast today or maybe even a week ago and listen to this podcast, it's too much. It's too much. And that's because you don't need to work on specific under or over methylation. I know this will shake a little bit of feathers out there, but you don't need to work on over or under methylation until you take care of the other big rocks, okay? What does that mean? It means that you need to be working on overall your nutrition, overall your diet, right? Overall your exercise, your stress reduction, your toxin removal, doing a detox, working on your sleep, working on your emotional balance, your foundational-based nutritional supplements, and your success-based mindset, right? That's the de-stress protocol. And then you say, okay, I've been working on that for a while. I'm feeling pretty good, worked on a lot of great things. I still have a couple tendencies towards over-methylation or under-methylation. Then I say, okay, now let's fine-tune that, because we can fine-tune it. That's the amazing thing about personalized medicine or personalized health, is that you get to fine-tune it should you choose to. And what does fine-tuning mean? Well, it's actually fine-tuning your nutrition. As you know, I'm a huge advocate of more of a Mediterranean-style diet. It doesn't mean that you should be eating a lot of bread or things like that. What it means is that you want to get a lot of good fruits and veggies as those antioxidants. But those people that are under-methylators, they might not want to do a liter of green juice every day, right? It might not work great for them. However, the over-methylators, it could work great for. Now, let's talk about other things to look out for in general. Things that are going to exacerbate both conditions are vegetable oils. So that essentially means fried foods, chips, things that come in a box or a bag. They're going to have some type of vegetable-based oil in there. Let me see if I can get that show for you. See, because there's a big difference between polyunsaturated fats that have been cooked and uncooked polyunsaturated fats, cold pressed, which can actually be somewhat healthy for you. So check out episode 1601, Do Fats Cause Cancer? You can check that out. And then, of course, you can check out episode 1608, which is a follow-up, meaning the skinny unsaturated fats. Okay, so you can check those out, but cooked vegetable oils, hydrogenated vegetable oils, fake butters, all of those things, not good. All right, processed foods in general, not good. Gluten and dairy, cow's milk dairy, for most people are going to exacerbate symptoms because they are a food-based sensitivity as well. Soy is another big one. Now, again, oftentimes because it's a genetically modified food at 92+%, but we do see it being a common food sensitivity exacerbator. Eggs as well, believe it or not. So we have to be careful with those because for some people, eggs could be part of a diet that may actually help them nutritionally. Like, for example, if you are someone that is an undermethylator, you may actually do better with some foods that are higher in methionine. So if you're looking at some of those foods, they would be things actually like some grass-fed beef or meat, some eggs, maybe even things like some natural kefir or goat milk or sheep's milk, okay? So when we look at those things, those would be better for undermethylators, but not good for overmethylators. And it doesn't mean that you need to eat these foods, because you can look up other foods that are higher in methionine. Whereas an overmethylator, well, they could do much better with more of a plant-based diet. I'll say one thing, though, too, because I always like to give both sides of the story and be as unbiased as I can. When you are an undermethylator, which is, again, when we're looking at people with methylation issues, you're 3 times more likely to be an undermethylator. There's such a huge issue with histamines. And I do hope that you go over to stevencabral.com/podcasts and you check out my previous shows on histamines. It's one of those things that it's not talked about enough. Because a lot of the mental health issues, a lot of the inflammatory and physical-based issues we have are partially contributed to histamine. And when you're eating a lot of fermented foods, when you're eating a lot of smoked foods, you're eating a lot of cured foods or pickled foods or even leftovers, it can contribute to all sorts of issues. GI issues, mental health issues, skin issues, etc. I would love for you to check out my shows on histamines. That's definitely the next area to check out, because undermethylation and histamines go hand in hand. And the last part, I'll leave you with this. What is this whole methylation thing that it is in the first place? Why is it so important? Well, if you think about it like this, methylation is simply the process, and I know it's not simple, but simply the process of adding a methyl group to compounds in the body. So it helps your DNA essentially turn on and off and do its job. So it's obviously crucial. And a methyl group is just 1 carbon and 3 hydrogens. But what it does is it allows you to express these single nucleotide polymorphs, express the genes, and when it becomes imbalanced because of toxicity, poor diet, too much stress, GI-based issues, any number of things, blood sugar dysregulation, exposure to higher levels of histamines, poor sleep, really poor mindset, all of those things can begin to turn on, use up your methyls, your methyl donors, and actually begin to switch on this process of undermethylation or potentially overmethylation. What that in turn does is it begins to throw off neurotransmitters. And histamine can act as a neurotransmitter. So it begins to throw off norepinephrine. Think of that as get up and go energy. Dopamine as your reward-based center for your ambition, your drive, and serotonin as your happy, feel-good neurotransmitter, and even GABA as the anti-anxiety. So remember, these are all chemical compounds that we manufacture in our own body. And when our bodies are imbalanced, we become imbalanced in both body and mind. I share this with you today as a starting point. We will certainly talk more about this. But remember, when you have this type of information, you can begin to see that there truly is an underlying root cause for everything. That if we can find out the underlying root cause, we can begin to heal the body. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. I appreciate you. And as always, if this show was helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone you believe it could serve. Before you go, I wanted to ask you this question. What if I could teach you in just a couple of hours how to transform your thyroid, hormones, adrenal, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, weight loss, energy, mood, brain, pregnancy, anti-aging, or many other health-related issues? After 20 years in private practice, after seeing and overseeing 250,000 client appointments, I sincerely feel I have the real-world data and have found the answer you've been searching for. So what I've done is spent hundreds of hours of my own time refining what you need to know in order to uncover your underlying root cause health issues and then begin to rebalance the body and bring it back to a state of robust health and wellness. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do in my private practice so you can understand how you got here and now what you need to do in order to heal. You'll receive all of the important success checklists, protocols, and even ways to customize it to make the program fit your busy life. And you'll get all of this at a fraction of the price. Let me save you the time, money, energy, stress, and frustration of not knowing what to do next. Instead of reading dozens of books on the topic and seeing multiple practitioners, I will condense everything that you need to know in just a few hours of video tutorials that you can watch and listen to anywhere. Together, we will make this healing process an enjoyable one that you can take with you for the rest of your life. I wish you all of the best of health and happiness, and I hope to be able to guide you on your healing journey through my health results accelerators. Simply choose the health imbalance you're currently suffering from, and by the end of today, you'll know what went wrong and how to get well again. I guarantee it. For details, head over now to stevencabral.com/courses.